It was 6 in the morning when I heard the banging on the door. It was not a normal knock, not the kind a mailman or a distracted neighbor gives. These were heavy, insistent, desperate blows, the kind of knocking that wakes you up with your heart racing, with that feeling that something bad is happening. I sat up in bed, confused, trying to understand what was going on. Outside, it was still dark. The light of dawn was barely beginning to filter through the curtains of my room. Who could be knocking on my door at this hour? I thought about ignoring it, going back to bed, and pretending I had not heard anything. But the knocking continued, increasingly urgent, increasingly desperate. I got up, put on the robe I always leave hanging next to the bed, and walked barefoot down the cold hallway of my house. Every step I took toward the door increased my nervousness. Something in the air felt strange, heavy, as if the morning itself knew that this day was not going to be like the others. I reached the entrance and looked through the peephole. It was Arthur, my neighbor for a lifetime, the man who lived 3 houses down, the same one who had helped me fix the garden when Robert died 5 years ago. But it was not the calm and kind Arthur I knew. His face was pale, unhinged. His eyes were wide open, full of something I recognized immediately. Fear. Genuine, deep fear, the kind that cannot be faked. I opened the door slowly, just enough to see him better. He took a step forward, almost stumbling over his own words. "Emily, listen to me carefully. Do not leave the house today. Please, trust me. Do not go out for any reason." His voice was trembling. Arthur never trembled. He was a 70-year-old man, an ex-Marine, someone who had seen things in his life that I could not even imagine. And there he was, standing in front of me, begging me to listen to him with an urgency that froze my blood. "What? Arthur, what are you talking about? What is wrong?" He looked back toward the empty street as if he expected to see something or someone. Then he looked back at me, and for a moment I thought he was going to tell me everything, but he did not. He just shook his head with an expression of anguish I had never seen on him before. "I cannot explain right now. Just stay in the house. Lock the doors. Do not open for anyone, not even if they look like officers. Do you understand me? Anyone." I felt a chill run down my spine. Officers? What was he talking about? Why could you not simply tell me what was happening? "Arthur, you are scaring me. Tell me what is going on. You will understand this afternoon. I promise you will understand. But right now, I need you to trust me. Please, Emily, please." And before I could answer, before I could demand a real explanation, he was already backing away, moving down the driveway. I watched him disappear into the gloom of the morning, walking fast, constantly looking to the sides as if he were being chased. I closed the door with trembling hands and stood there, in the silence of my own house, trying to process what had just happened. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. What the hell was that? I walked to the kitchen. I needed a glass of water. I needed to think clearly. I turned on the light and the sudden glare made me blink. Everything in my house looked normal. The table where I always have breakfast, the mugs hanging in their place, the wall clock that Robert gave me on our 30th anniversary. Everything the same, but nothing felt the same. I poured myself water with hands that were still shaking and sat down on one of the chairs. Why was Arthur so scared? And why could he not tell me the reason? He and I had a good relationship. After Robert died, Arthur was one of the few people who really worried about me. He helped me with heavy things around the house, invited me for coffee from time to time. He was always there when I needed him. But this was different. This was not a courtesy visit or a favor between neighbors. This was a warning, an urgent, desperate, terrifying warning. I looked at the clock. 6:15 in the morning. Outside, the sky was beginning to light up slowly, painting itself in shades of orange and pink. Any other day, I would be getting ready to go out. On Tuesdays, I always went to the community center to help with the reading program for children. It was something I had started doing after becoming a widow, a way to fill the hours, to feel useful, to not stay alone in this house full of memories. But today, Arthur had told me not to go out, to stay locked in. Why? What could be so dangerous out there that he felt the need to come to my house at 6 in the morning to warn me? I tried to rationalize. Maybe he had heard something on the news. Maybe there was a security alert in the neighborhood. But then why did he not tell me directly? Why all this mystery? And why did he tell me not to open, even if they looked like officers? That part unsettled me more than anything else. Officers of what? Police? Government? What kind of situation requires one to distrust the authorities? I got up and walked to the living room window. I pulled back just a corner of the curtain and looked out. The street was empty and quiet. The trees swayed gently with the morning breeze. Everything seemed perfectly normal, too normal perhaps. Then I saw it, a car, parked at the end of the street, right at the corner. A gray sedan with tinted windows. It did not belong to anyone in the neighborhood. Of that I was sure. I knew my neighbors' cars. This was new, and something about the way it was parked, slightly angled, as if the driver wanted to have a clear view of the whole street, put my nerves on edge. Was that car there before? I did not remember, but I did not usually pay attention to those things either, until today. I let go of the curtain and backed away from the window, feeling a growing paranoia. This was ridiculous. I was a 68-year-old woman, a widow, retired, with a simple and predictable life. Who would want to hurt me? Why would someone be watching my house? But Arthur's look was still etched in my mind. The fear in his eyes was real, and Arthur was not a man who got scared easily. I went back to the kitchen, and this time I made myself a coffee. I needed caffeine. I needed to wake up completely and think about this clearly. While the water boiled, I took out my phone. Maybe I should call someone. But who? My children lived far away. Jessica in another state, working on her law career. David overseas, chasing his dreams as a photographer. We had spoken last Sunday, our routine weekly call. Everything normal? Everything fine. I could not call them now and tell them I was scared because my neighbor told me not to leave the house. Alarm bells would ring. They wanted me to move in with one of them, to leave this house, this life, and I was not ready for that. Not yet. The coffee was ready and I sat back down at the table, staring at the steaming mug. What was I supposed to do? Sit here all day waiting for it to pass? What exactly? Arthur said I would understand by the afternoon. What was going to happen in the afternoon? I took a sip of coffee, barely burning my tongue. The pain brought me back to reality. I needed to calm down. Maybe I was exaggerating. Maybe Arthur had had a nightmare or was going through something personal and did not want to worry me with the details. Maybe. The phone rang. I jumped so hard I almost spilled the coffee. My heart started racing again. I looked at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated for a moment. My finger suspended over the answer button. What if it was part of what Arthur had warned me about, but it could also be a normal call, a survey, a telemarketer? I answered. Hello? Silence. I could hear there was someone on the other end, a soft breathing, but no one spoke. Hello? Who is this? More silence. And then, click. They hung up. I lowered the phone slowly, looking at it as if it were a strange and dangerous object. A silent call at 6:30 in the morning, right after Arthur's warning. It was no coincidence. It could not be. I got up again, this time with more urgency, and checked all the doors in the house. The front door, locked. The back door leading to the garden, locked. The windows, all closed. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, but I also felt a little safer. I went back to the living room and sat on the sofa, hugging a cushion against my chest. Outside, the day continued to brighten. The world was waking up as it always did, but I was in here, locked up, scared, without understanding what was happening. And the worst of all was the waiting. Arthur said I would understand by the afternoon. That meant hours. Hours of being here, alone, with my imagination creating the most terrible scenarios. I looked at the clock again, 6:45. The day had just begun, and I already felt like it had lasted an eternity. The hours passed with an unbearable slowness. I sat on the sofa, looking at the clock every 5 minutes, feeling time drag as if the day itself was conspiring against my sanity. I tried to distract myself. I turned on the TV, but I could not concentrate on anything. The news talked about the weather, politics, sports. Everything normal. Nothing that explained why my neighbor had appeared terrified at my door. I turned off the TV and silence filled the house again. That silence I knew so well. That had been my constant companion for the last 5 years. Since Robert died, silence had become something familiar, almost comforting. But today was different. Today, the silence did not comfort me. It oppressed me. I got up and walked through the house, checking the windows again, making sure everything was closed. I felt ridiculous doing this, like a paranoid old woman seeing danger where there is none. But I could not help it. Every noise made me jump. The The wind against the windows, the creaking of the old wood of the house, the distant hum of a car passing on the street. I reached the room that had been mine and Robert's for 35 years of marriage. Now, it was just mine. The bed perfectly made, the curtains half drawn, his things still on the nightstand. I never had the courage to remove them. His watch, his reading glasses, the book he never finished. Sometimes I came in here just to feel him close, to remember what it was like to have someone in this house, what it was like not to be alone. The kids had suggested 1,000 times that I sell the house, that I move to something smaller, more manageable. "It is too big for you alone, Mom," Jessica would say every time we talked, and she was right. This 3-bedroom house with its large garden and long hallways was too much for a woman my age, but it was my home. It was the place where I had built my life, where I had raised my children, where I had loved and lost. I was not ready to let it go. Not yet. I went back to the living room and peeked out the window again. The gray car was still there. It had not moved in 2 hours. This could no longer be a coincidence. Someone was watching the street, or they were watching me. I felt a chill. Why would anyone want to watch me? I was nobody important. I was just a retired widow living off her pension and the savings Robert had left. We had a modest life. We never had much money. Robert worked all his life as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. He did his job, came home, we had dinner together, watched TV. A simple, predictable life, without secrets or mysteries. Or that was what I thought. I moved away from the window and went to the kitchen. I needed to eat something, although I was not hungry. I made a sandwich that I could barely taste. The food felt like a knot in my throat. My stomach was closed from anxiety. The phone rang again. This time I almost dropped it. I grabbed it with trembling hands and looked at the screen. Unknown number, again. Different from the morning one, but just as anonymous. I hesitated. Should I answer? What if it was the same person as before? But curiosity won. I answered. Hello? Silence again. But this time I could hear something else. Background noise, as if the caller were in a public place. Distant voices. The sound of traffic. Who is this? Why are you calling me? Nothing. Just that soft, almost imperceptible breathing. And then, click, they hung up again. I left the phone on the table and sat down, feeling tears threatening to come out. I was not a woman who cried easily. I had learned to be strong when Robert died. I had had to be. But this was overwhelming me. This feeling of not knowing what was happening, of being trapped in something I did not understand. Why were they doing this to me? What did they want from me? I looked at the clock. 10 in the morning. 4 more hours until 2 in the afternoon. 4 eternal hours. I got up and started walking through the house again, unable to sit still. I passed the hallway full of family photos. Jessica and David when they were little, smiling in their school uniforms. Our wedding, me in my white dress, and Robert so young and handsome. Vacations at the beach, birthdays, graduations. A whole life captured in frames hanging on the wall. I stopped in front of a photo of Robert taken a few months before he died. He was in the garden with his gardening tools, smiling at the camera. He looked happy, healthy. No one would have imagined that 3 months later he would suffer a massive heart attack while sleeping. The doctor said it was quick, that he did not suffer. That was supposed to comfort me, but it never really did. I missed him so much. I missed his voice, his laugh, the way he hugged me at night before sleeping. I missed having someone to share my days with, someone to make me feel less alone in this world. What is happening, Robert? I whispered to the photograph. Why am I so scared? Obviously, there was no answer, only the silence of the house and the ticking of the wall clock. I kept walking and reached the study Robert used to work from home when he brought papers from the office. I had never touched this room much after his death. The kids helped me pack some things, but most of it was still there. His files, his binders, his desk, organized in the meticulous way he always kept it. I went in and sat in his chair. The old leather creaked under my weight. I ran my fingers over the surface of the desk, gathering a bit of the dust that had settled over the years. Robert spent hours here, checking numbers, making calculations, working on things I never really understood. He was the numbers guy. I was the homemaker, the mother, the one who kept everything running while he brought the money. That was how our marriage worked, and it had never bothered me. We were a team, each with our role. But now I wondered if I had really known my husband. Were there secrets in his life that I was unaware of? Things he hid from me to protect me? I shook my head. I was being ridiculous. Robert was a good, honest, transparent man. There were no secrets. There were no mysteries. It was just fear talking, making me doubt everything. I got up from the chair and was about to leave the study when I heard something that froze my blood. Footsteps. Outside in the garden. I froze, my heart pounding against my ribs. The steps were slow, deliberate. Someone was walking along the side of my house. I approached the study window carefully, moving as silently as possible. The curtains were partially closed. I peeked just one eye over the edge and looked out. There was a man in my garden, tall, dressed in dark clothes, walking slowly down the side path. It was no one I knew. He had his hands in his pockets and was looking toward the house, studying it as if he were looking for something. Panic invaded me. I backed away from the window, stumbling over my own feet. Who was he? What was he doing on my property? Should I call the police? But Arthur had told me not to open even to officers. Did that mean I should not trust the police either? I peeked again, more cautious this time. The man was still there, now looking toward the windows. For a terrible second, I thought he had seen me, but he kept walking, circling the house, disappearing toward the back garden. I ran to the kitchen, where I had a view of the backyard. I arrived just in time to see him try the handle of the back door. My door. He was trying to get in. I stifled a scream. The door was locked, thank God, but he kept trying, pushing gently, testing if it would give. I backed away from the window, hands over my mouth, trying to control my breathing. This could not be happening. This was not real. After what seemed like an eternity, the footsteps moved away. I looked again. The man was gone, disappearing through the same place he had arrived. I dropped into a kitchen chair, trembling from head to toe. Someone had tried to enter my house. Someone was watching me, following me, testing my doors. Arthur was right. Something terrible was happening. I looked at the clock with tear-filled eyes. 11:30 in the morning. Still 2.5 hours to go. How much more could I take? I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and wrote a message to Arthur. Someone was in my garden. Tried to open my door. I am scared. What is happening? I sent the message and waited, staring at the screen in desperation. Minutes passed. 1, 2, 5. There was no answer. Please, Arthur, answer me. Nothing. The silence of my house was now deafening. Every shadow seemed to move. Every sound was a threat. I felt like a cornered animal, waiting for the moment the predator would finally attack. And the worst was that I did not even know who the predator was, or why they had chosen me. The phone rang at 12 noon, exactly at 12, as if the caller had been waiting for that precise moment. This time, it was not an unknown number. On the screen, it simply said, Police Department. My heart skipped a beat. With trembling hands, I slid my finger to answer. Hello, Mrs. Emily Henderson. It was a male voice. Official? Serious? Yes, this is her. Mrs. Henderson, this is Detective Miller from the police department. I need you to stay calm and listen to what I am going to tell you. The tone of his voice made my stomach turn. Something bad had happened. Something very bad. What is going on? Ma'am, where are you right now? The question baffled me. Why did he need to know where I was? I am in my house. Why? What is wrong? There was a pause on the other end. I could hear voices in the background, movement, as if the detective were in the middle of something important. Mrs. Henderson, I need you to confirm something for me. You were this morning at the Oak Creek Community Center. I froze. The Oak Creek Community Center. It was exactly where I went every Tuesday at 9 in the morning, where I was supposed to be today, where I would have been if Arthur had not warned me to stay home. No, I replied, feeling my voice tremble. No, I was here in my house all morning. Why? Another pause, this time longer. When the detective spoke again, his tone was different, more cautious, more worried. Ma'am, this morning at 9:20 there was an incident at the community center, a serious incident, and we have multiple testimonies from people who claim to have seen you there. I felt as if the ground opened up beneath my feet. What? No, that is impossible. I was not there. I am telling you, I was in my house all morning. I understand, ma'am, but I need you to grasp the gravity of the situation. There are witnesses who identified you. There are even recordings from the center's security cameras. That cannot be. It has to be a mistake. I did not leave my house. Mrs. Henderson, is there anyone who can corroborate that you were in your house this morning? Any family member? Any neighbor? I thought of Arthur, but he had specifically warned me not to open the door to anyone. Did that include the police? And besides, he had not answered my message. I had no way to prove where I had been. I was alone, but I swear I did not go out. What incident? What happened? The detective sighed on the other end of the line. I would prefer not to give details over the phone. Ma'am, I need you to come to the station so we can clear this up. Go to the station? I am being accused of something. I am not saying that, ma'am. We just need you to come give your statement and help us understand what happened. This is very serious. My mind was a chaos of contradictory thoughts. Arthur had told me not to go out, not to open even to officers. But now the police were asking me to go to the station. What was I supposed to do? I need time to process this. I can go later. Mrs. Henderson, I really need you to come now. If you were not at the center, as you say, then we have a much bigger problem. Someone is using your identity. The words fell on me like stones. Someone is using my identity. What did that mean? Someone was pretending to be me. Why? I do not understand any of this. How is it possible that someone... That is why we need you to come, ma'am, to resolve this. Can I send a patrol car to pick you up if you prefer? No. The word came out louder than I intended. No, let me think. I need a moment. Ma'am, if you do not come voluntarily, I will have to... I hung up. I know it was stupid. I know I probably made things worse, but panic took over. I dropped the phone on the sofa and put my hands to my head. What was happening? How is it possible that there were witnesses who saw me in a place where I was not? And what incident had occurred? The detective said it was serious. How serious? The phone rang again immediately. Again, the police department. I did not answer. It kept ringing 1, 2, 3 times, until finally it stopped ringing. I got up and started pacing the living room, trying to think, to make sense of this. Someone had pretended to be me, someone who knew exactly where I went on Tuesday mornings, someone who knew my routine, and something had happened. Something serious enough for the police to call me, something for which they were now blaming me. I ran to the window and looked out. The gray car was gone. In its place, there was now a police patrol car parked at the end of the street. 2 officers were inside, looking toward my house. Fear turned into pure terror. I backed away from the window, my heart beating so fast I thought I was going to faint. This was real. Everything was real. I was not paranoid. I was not exaggerating. Something terrible was happening, and I was in the center of it all. I grabbed my phone again and wrote to Arthur once more, this time with more desperation. The police called me. They say they saw me at the community center. What happened? Something serious. There is a patrol car outside my house. Arthur, please, I need you to help me. I need you to explain what is happening. I sent the message and waited, looking at the screen with tears running down my cheeks. This time the answer came almost immediately. Do not open the door. It does not matter what they tell you. I am coming over. Give me 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I had to hold on for 20 minutes more. I looked out the window again. The officers were still in the patrol car, but now one of them was talking on the radio, probably reporting that I was home, that I had not left, that I was not answering their calls. How much time would pass before they decided to come get me? Did they have an arrest warrant? Could they enter my house without my permission? I knew nothing about laws. I had never had problems with the police in my life. I had been an exemplary citizen for 68 years. And now I was hiding in my own home, terrified of the very officers who were supposed to protect me. The phone rang again. This time, it was a number I did not recognize, but different from the previous ones. I hesitated to answer, but something in me needed to know more. Hello, Mrs. Henderson. It was a female voice this time, young, nervous. Who is this? My name is Angelica. I work at the Oak Creek Community Center. Ma'am, I need to speak with you. It is about what happened this morning. My breathing accelerated. What happened? Nobody wants to tell me what happened exactly. It is complicated. The woman who was here this morning, the one we all thought was you, she did something terrible. She stole money from the donation box, more than $3,000 that we had raised for the scholarship program. And not only that, she also took files from the administrative office, personal documents of several volunteers and program participants. I let myself fall onto the sofa, feeling my legs fail me, but it was not me. I did not do that. Why would they do this to me? I know, said Angelica, and her voice sounded genuinely confused. That is why I am calling you, because something does not add up. That woman looked a lot like you, Mrs. Henderson. A lot. But when I saw her up close, something was wrong. Her eyes, the way she walked, how she spoke, it was you, but it was not you. Do you understand what I mean? No, I do not understand anything. How is it possible that someone looks so much like me? And why? To steal $3,000. That is what makes no sense, continued Angelica. $3,000 is money, yes, but someone who took the trouble to impersonate you, to know your routine, your schedule, why risk it for that amount? And the files she took were specific files, as if she knew exactly what she was looking for. What kind of files? I cannot give details, ma'am, but they were sensitive documents, personal information. The director is furious and the police are investigating, but I just felt I should call you. Because when I saw that woman this morning, something inside me told me something was wrong. And now that I know it was not really you, everything makes more sense. Did you tell this to the police? Yes, but they are focused on finding you. They have your prints on the box, witnesses who identified you. For them, it is a clear case. My prints? How can they have my prints if I was not there? There was an awkward silence on the other end. I do not know, ma'am, but they have them, Detective Miller told me. I hung up the phone feeling like I was going to vomit. My prints? How was it possible? How could someone have my prints? Then I remembered. 2 months ago, I had gone to the bank to renew some documents. They asked for my fingerprints for the new debit card. A standard procedure, they told me. Some additional security. Was it possible that someone had accessed that information? That they had used it? I looked at the clock. 10 minutes had passed since Arthur's message. 10 minutes more. But then I heard something that made my blood freeze. Footsteps on the porch. Banging on the door. But they were not desperate knocks like Arthur's this morning. They were firm, authoritative knocks. Mrs. Henderson, Police Department, we need you to open the door. I stood paralyzed in the middle of the living room, staring at the door as if it were a living creature about to devour me. The knocking continued, more insistent each time. Mrs. Henderson, we know you are in there. Please open the door. We just want to talk to you. It was Detective Miller's voice, the same voice I had heard on the phone minutes before. But now, hearing it on the other side of my door, so close, terrified me in a way I could not explain. Arthur had told me not to open, not to trust anyone, not even officers. But how could I not open to the police? Would it not make everything worse if I refused? Ma'am, if you do not open voluntarily, we will have to consider other options. We do not want to reach that point. Other options. What did that mean? Breaking down the door? A court order? My mind tried to process all the possibilities while my feet remained glued to the floor. I approached the door slowly, without making noise, and looked through the peephole. They were 2 men dressed in dark suits. One of them, the one who had been speaking, was about 50 years old, gray hair, serious expression. The other was younger, standing slightly behind, looking around the porch as if expecting someone else to appear. We just want to clarify the situation at the community center, Detective Miller continued. If you really were not there, as you claim, then we need your help to find who did it. It is as simple as that. It sounded reasonable, logical, exactly what a real detective would say. But something in his tone, in the way he looked at me through the peephole, told me that this was not that simple. I need to speak to my lawyer first, I said finally, surprising myself with how firm my voice sounded. The 2 men exchanged glances. Ma'am, you are not being accused of anything yet. We just need your statement. You do not need a lawyer for a conversation. Yet, that word echoed in my mind. I was not being accused yet, but I would be soon if I did not cooperate. Anyway, I prefer to wait. The detective sighed, and for a moment I thought they would leave, but then he took something out of his pocket. A photograph. Can you at least see this? Mrs. Henderson. He held it up to the peephole. It was a security camera image, grainy and black and white, but clear. It showed a woman entering the community center, a woman who looked exactly like me. My heart stopped. It was like looking in a mirror. The same height, the same haircut, the same way of walking. She was even wearing clothes similar to what I would have worn. Beige pants and a light blouse with a sweater on top. That is you, Mrs. Henderson. I could not answer. I was too shocked. Who was that woman? How was it possible she looked so much like me? She has your face, your build, your way of dressing. The employees at the center recognized her immediately. They even called her by her name, and she answered. Are you telling me you have a twin no one knows about? I have no siblings, I whispered, although I was not sure if they had heard me. The detective put the photograph away and his expression hardened. Mrs. Henderson, this is not going away. The more time passes without you cooperating, the worse it will look for you. I suggest you reconsider your decision. I already told you I was not there. I do not know who that woman is, but it is not me. Then help us prove it. Come with us. Give your statement. Allow us to take your prints to compare. You already have my prints, I interrupted. You told me you found them at the scene. Another exchange of glances between the two men. The younger one approached and whispered something in the detective's ear. Miller nodded slowly. It is true. We have them. Which makes your insistence that you were not there even harder to believe. You understand the situation you are putting yourself in. Yes, I understood. I understood perfectly that someone had planned this very carefully. Someone who knew where I went, how I dressed, how I spoke. Someone who had somehow obtained my prints. This was not a random theft. It was a calculated operation. But why? Why me? I am going to give you 5 minutes to open this door, Mrs. Henderson, said the detective, and now his voice held a threatening tone. 5 minutes. After that, we are going to have to take more drastic measures. They walked away from the porch and returned to the patrol car that was still parked on the street. I watched them talk to each other, one of them making a call on his radio. I moved away from the door with trembling legs. Where was Arthur? 15 minutes had already passed. I needed him to get here now, to explain what the hell was going on. I went back to the living room window and watched. The two men were still by the patrol car waiting. The younger one constantly checked his watch. Detective Miller was talking on the phone, gesturing with his hands as if he were arguing with someone. Then I saw another car approaching down the street, a black sedan, newer than the other cars in the neighborhood. It parked behind the patrol car and a woman got out. She wore a formal suit and sunglasses even though the day was cloudy. She approached Detective Miller and they started talking. I could not hear what they were saying, but the conversation seemed tense. The woman pointed toward my house. The detective shook his head. She insisted. Who was she? Another detective? A prosecutor? My phone vibrated. A message from Arthur. I am 2 blocks away. Do not open the door. Whatever happens, do not open. 2 blocks. He had almost arrived. I just needed to hold on a little longer. But then the woman in the suit started walking toward my house. Not toward the front door, but toward the side, the same path the dark-clothed man had taken this morning. She disappeared from my sight. I ran to the kitchen to see what she was doing. I saw her walking through the side garden, looking toward the windows, studying the house. She reached the back door and, to my horror, took something out of her bag. A small metal tool. She was trying to pick the lock. Panic completely invaded me. I grabbed the first thing I found, a kitchen knife from the drawer, and stood there, trembling, not knowing what to do. The woman kept working on the lock. I could hear the small metallic clicks. It was only a matter of time before she managed to open it. Then I heard the engine of a car revving. Through the front window, I saw Arthur's car skidding to a stop in front of my house. He jumped out of the vehicle and ran toward Detective Miller, shouting something I could not hear. The two men confronted each other. Arthur gestured violently, pointing toward my house, toward the officers. The detective tried to calm him, but Arthur did not stop. And at that moment, I heard the definitive click of the rear lock opening. The door opened slowly, and the woman in the suit entered my kitchen, taking off her sunglasses. When I saw her face clearly, I felt the world stop. She had my face. She did not just look like me. She was exactly me. Every wrinkle, every mark, every detail. She smiled, and it was the most terrifying smile I had ever seen in my life. "Hello, Emily," she said with my own voice. "I think you and I need to have a very serious conversation." I backed up until I hit the wall, the knife shaking in my hand. The woman closed the door behind her calmly, never taking her eyes off me. It was like standing in front of a living mirror, but a mirror that moved of its own will, that breathed, that smiled with a coldness I had never seen in my own reflection. "Do not scream," she said, raising her hands in a gesture of peace that conveyed no tranquility. "If you scream, those outside are going to come in, and believe me, you do not want that to happen." "Who are you?" My voice came out barely as a hoarse whisper. "That is a complicated question," she replied, walking slowly toward the kitchen table and sitting down as if she were in her own home. "Let us just say I am someone who knows your life very well. Every detail, every habit, every little secret. What do you want from me?" She tilted her head, studying me with those eyes that were identical to mine, but looked in a completely different way. There was something calculating in them, something ruthless. It is not what I want. It is what other people want. I am just the messenger, the executor, if you prefer to call it that. I do not understand anything you are saying. I know, and that is precisely the reason why we are in this situation. Your ignorance. Emily, your blessed and convenient ignorance about who your husband really was. The mention of Robert made something inside me snap. Fury replaced fear for a moment. Do not you dare talk about him. You know nothing about my husband. She laughed, and the sound was disturbing coming from my own face. That I know nothing? Oh, Emily, I know more about Robert than you knew in 35 years of marriage. I know about the hidden accounts, the encrypted files, the secret meetings. I know about what he discovered and what he tried to do with that information. You are lying. Robert was an accountant. He worked with numbers, with companies, with corrupt companies, she interrupted, with dirty politicians, with very powerful people who moved money in very illegal ways. And your dear Robert, the honest and hardworking accountant, decided he had to do the right thing. He decided to gather evidence, document everything, prepare to expose these people. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor, still clutching the knife. This could not be real. Robert had never mentioned any of this to me. Why would he have done that? Why risk everything? Because he was a noble idiot, she said with disdain. Because he believed in justice and doing the right thing, even if that meant endangering his family. And look at him now, 5 years dead, and you here, paying for his decisions. His death was a heart attack. The doctor confirmed it. She looked at me with something resembling pity. Are you really that naive? Men of 58 in perfect health do not suffer massive heart attacks out of nowhere, especially when they are about to hand over incriminating evidence to the authorities. The words hit me like punches. It could not be true. It could not be that Robert had been murdered and I never knew. It could not be that all this time. Why now? I asked, tears beginning to roll down my cheeks. Why, after 5 years, do you come for me? Because we found something, a trail Robert left, a clue suggesting he did not take all the evidence to the grave, that he left a backup copy, and we believe you know where it is. I know nothing. I swear to you, I know nothing about any evidence. That is what you said 6 months ago when we intercepted you at the bank. Remember? We asked for your fingerprints for the new security card, a completely routine procedure. The memory came back to me with terrifying clarity. The bank employee, insistent but kind, the digital scanner. The way she assured me it was just for my protection. It was you. It was me. We needed your prints so we could use them today, to make the theft at the community center look like your fault, to have leverage over you, to pressure you to cooperate. But I do not know where that evidence is. Robert never told me anything. She got up from the chair and approached me, crouching down to be at my eye level. Her closeness made my stomach turn. Then you are going to have to remember. You are going to have to think about every conversation you had in his last days, every strange comment, every unexpected gift, every place he asked you to go or to avoid. Because he told you something, Emily. He left you something. Men like Robert always leave something to protect their wives. Outside, I heard Arthur's voice shouting, still arguing with the detective. How much longer could he keep them busy? And if I really know nothing, what are you going to do then? She straightened up, looking down at me with a cold expression. Then you are going to go to prison for theft and identity fraud. You have your prints on the donation box, multiple witnesses and video recordings showing you clearly at the crime scene. They are going to give you years, Emily, years locked up, far from your children, slowly dying in a cell. You cannot do this. It is already done, unless you give me what I want. The front door burst open. Arthur stormed into the house, followed immediately by Detective Miller and the other officer. Arthur saw me on the floor, saw the woman standing in front of me, and his face paled. "Get away from her," Arthur ordered, his voice full of an authority I had never heard from him. The woman turned toward them, showing no sign of surprise or concern. "Arthur Morgan, it has been years. Still the loyal guardian, right? I said, "Get away." Detective Miller looked confused between the woman and me, noticing for the first time the impossible similarity. What the hell is going on here? Arthur moved quickly, placing himself between the woman and me, helping me up with his free hand. In the other hand, he held something that made my heart stop. A yellow envelope, old and worn. "It is time for Emily to know the truth," said Arthur, looking directly at the woman. "The whole truth. Robert made me promise to protect her, to only tell her if danger arrived at her door. Well, here is the danger." He held the envelope out to me. I took it with trembling hands. On the front, written in Robert's unmistakable handwriting, it said, "For Emily, open only with Arthur." "What is this?" "Your answer," replied Arthur, "and also your sentence, depending on how you decide to use it." The woman took a step toward us, but Detective Miller finally reacted, blocking her path. "Nobody moves until someone explains to me what is happening. Mrs. Henderson, or whoever you are, stay where you are." I looked at the envelope in my hands, feeling its weight as if it contained the entire life I thought I knew, and all the lies that sustained it. Robert had known. He had known this would happen someday, and he had left me something. Something important enough for dangerous people to come looking for it 5 years later. "Open it, Emily," urged Arthur. "It is time you know who your husband really was. And who are you now that he is no longer here to protect you?" With trembling fingers, I began to open the envelope, knowing that what I found inside would change everything forever. The envelope contained a letter folded in 3 parts, handwritten in Robert's careful script. Just seeing it made me feel his presence, as if he were there with me, trying to explain something he never had the courage to tell me in life. With shaking hands, I began to read while everyone in the kitchen waited in silence. "My dear Emily, if you are reading this, it means the danger I feared so much has finally arrived. It means I am no longer there to protect you, and that Arthur kept his promise to take care of you when I could not. Forgive me for the lies. Forgive me for building our life on secrets you never should have carried. But understand that every decision I made was to keep you safe, you and our children." I had to stop, tears making the words blur. Arthur put a hand on my shoulder, giving me strength to continue. For 20 years, I worked as an accountant for legitimate companies. But 8 years ago, one of my clients asked me to review certain accounts of a construction company. What I found was much bigger than I imagined. A massive money laundering scheme involving high-level politicians, judges, influential businessmen. They were moving millions of dollars through fake projects, inflated contracts, diverted public funds. My breath hitched. Robert had discovered a corruption network. Why did he never tell me? At first, I tried to ignore it. "Emily, I wanted to pretend I had not seen anything, but I could not. I could not sleep knowing those people were stealing money that should go to hospitals, schools, social programs, money that could have saved lives. So I started keeping copies, documents, transfers, emails, everything that proved their guilt." The woman who had my face let out a bitter laugh from where the detective was keeping an eye on her. "Your noble husband, so brave, so stupid." Arthur shot her a killer look, but said nothing. I continued reading. I contacted an investigative journalist named Alan Vaughn. We planned to make all the information public, but someone discovered us. Alan died in a supposed car accident 2 weeks before we could publish. Then I knew they would come for me too, so I took precautions. I hid all the evidence in a safe place, a place only you could find, Emily, because it is connected to a memory only we share. My heart pounded. What memory? What was he talking about? Remember our 25th anniversary, the trip we took, the place where we renewed our vows, the small box we buried under the tree, with our promises written inside. Everything is there, my love. Every document, every proof, every name. They are waiting for someone brave enough to use them. The letter continued, but my hands shook so much that Arthur had to hold it for me so I could keep reading. Arthur knows everything. He was my confidant, my protector. I asked him to watch over you from a distance, to never tell you anything unless the danger was imminent. Trust him as I trusted. And forgive me, Emily, forgive me for leaving you alone with this weight. But if you are reading this, it is because you now have a decision to make. You can hand over the evidence and complete what I started, risking your own safety, or you can destroy it and live the rest of your life in peace, even if that peace is built on silence. I will not judge you for whatever decision you make. Just know that I love you, that I always loved you, and that my greatest regret is not being able to be there to face this with you. Yours always, Robert. I dropped the letter, feeling as if my heart had been ripped from my chest. All this time, 5 years believing I had known my husband, when in reality I had been living with a stranger, a brave and foolish stranger who had decided to take on powerful people without even telling me. Our 25th anniversary, I whispered. We went to the cabin in the mountains, 2 hours from here. Arthur nodded slowly. The cabin you rented for a week, where you renewed your vows under that old oak tree. The memories returned with painful clarity. It had been one of the most beautiful moments of our marriage. Robert had organized everything: the small but cozy cabin, the private ceremony with just the two of us, the tree under which we promised to love each other for another 25 years. We'd written our promises on papers and buried them in a small metal box at the foot of the tree, saying we would come back for them someday. We never went back. 2 years later, Robert was dead. The documents are there, I said, more to myself than to the others, buried under the tree. The woman with my face stepped forward, but Detective Miller stopped her firmly. Who are you? He asked her. And do not lie to me because I am sick of this circus. She looked at him with contempt. I am someone hired to recover something that does not belong to this family, something Mr. Henderson stole from very important people. He stole nothing, I snapped. Finding my voice, he documented crimes. There is a difference that cost him his life, she replied coldly, and that can cost you yours if you are not smart. Arthur stepped between us, his body tense as a spring. You are not going to touch her. Robert made me promise, and I am going to keep my word until my last breath. Detective Miller ran a hand over his face, clearly trying to process all the information. This is completely out of my jurisdiction. We are talking about conspiracy, political corruption, possible homicide. I need to call my superiors. No, said Arthur urgently. You do not know who you can trust. If those people have the power Robert documented, then they have people everywhere. Police, judges, prosecutors. One call to the wrong place and Emily will be dead before dawn. The words fell on me like ice water. Dead? Was I really in that much danger? Then what do you suggest I do? Asked the detective, and for the first time I heard uncertainty in his voice. Let us go, replied Arthur. Let us get to that cabin, recover the documents, and then we will hand them over to the right authorities. Someone outside the local system, someone federal. The woman laughed. From what? Said Arthur. My employers have eyes everywhere. Before they cross the city limits, there will be people waiting for them. Then we will die trying, said Arthur with a determination that scared me. But we are not going to hand those documents over to you so you can destroy them. Detective Miller looked at Arthur and me, then at the woman, clearly torn between his duty and what was right. If I let you go, I am risking my career, possibly my life. And if you do not, I said, finally finding my own determination, you will be allowing corrupt people to keep stealing and killing without consequences. My husband died trying to do the right thing. I am not going to let his sacrifice be in vain. There was a long silence. Outside, the other officer knocked on the door, asking if everything was okay. Detective Miller ignored him, his mind clearly working at full speed. Finally, he sighed deeply. You have a 2-hour head start. After that, I have to report this. And may God help us all. Arthur grabbed my arm and led me out of the house through the back door, while Detective Miller stayed behind, blocking the woman's path. I could hear her screaming, threatening, but her words faded as we ran through the side garden toward Arthur's car parked on the street. Get in, quick, he ordered, opening the passenger door. I threw myself inside and he took off before I even finished closing the door. Tires screeched against the asphalt as he sped down the residential street. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I looked in the side mirror and saw Detective Miller coming out of my house, speaking urgently into his radio. The woman with my face appeared behind him, her expression full of fury. Do you really think we will make it to that cabin? I asked, my voice cracking. She said they have people everywhere. We have to try, replied Arthur, his eyes fixed on the road as he took a curve with too much speed. Robert did not die for those documents to remain buried forever. We left the neighborhood and entered the highway. Arthur drove erratically, changing lanes constantly, taking unexpected exits to make sure no one followed us. "How did you really meet Robert?" I asked, needing to understand. "You said he told you everything. Why did he trust you?" Arthur kept his eyes on the road, but I saw his jaw tighten. "Because I also worked in the shadows. 15 years ago, I was a private investigator. I specialized in corporate fraud cases. Robert hired me when he started suspecting something was wrong with his clients. What we found together was much worse than either of us imagined. Why did you never tell me? All these years, living 3 houses down, helping me with the garden, having coffee with me. It was all a lie." "It was not a lie," he said firmly. "My affection for you is real, Emily. But I had orders from Robert. I was only to reveal the truth if your life was in danger. And until today, it wasn't." "How did you know today was the day?" "Because I have been seeing strange movements for months. Unknown cars in the neighborhood. People watching your house. Someone went through your trash last week. I knew they were preparing for something. When I intercepted a conversation early this morning, I knew it was today. That is why I went to warn you." He took another exit off the highway, and we entered a less traveled back road. The urban landscape began to give way to hills and trees. The cabin was in the mountains, far from the city, in a remote place Robert had chosen precisely for its privacy. "How long?" I asked. "Hour and a half if no one stops us, but we cannot take the direct route. I am going to circle around, use back roads. It will take us longer, but it is safer." I looked in the rearview mirror. For now, the road behind us was empty, but I knew it would not last. That woman, whoever she was, would not give up so easily. "Who is she?" I asked. "How is it possible she looks so much like me?" Arthur shifted gears as we climbed a steep hill. "Her name is Vanessa. She is a specialist. These criminal organizations use them to infiltrate, to steal identities. They have perfected prosthetic makeup techniques, minor surgery, voice training. She's probably been studying you for months. Every gesture, every expression, every way of moving." The idea made my stomach churn. Someone had been watching me, analyzing me, preparing to become me. And Detective Miller? Do you think he is really going to give us 2 hours? I hope so. He seemed like an honest man in a corrupt system, but we cannot trust anyone except ourselves. We continued driving in silence for several minutes. The landscape became greener, wilder. We passed small towns where life seemed to move slower, where people knew nothing about conspiracies or hidden documents or women stealing identities. "Did you ever regret it?" I asked suddenly. "Helping Robert? If you hadn't, maybe he would still be alive." Arthur gripped the steering wheel tightly. "Every day. But I also know Robert would have done the same with or without my help. He was a man of principles. He could not stand by with crossed arms while he saw so much corruption. And he left me alone. He left me with this burden. He left you the truth and the choice of what to do with it." We arrived at a small mountain town, and Arthur stopped at a gas station. We needed fuel, and it was also a chance to check if anyone was following us. "Stay in the car," he said. "Keep your head down." While he filled the tank, I looked around nervously. There were few people, an old trucker drinking coffee, a family with kids buying snacks. Everything seemed normal, too normal. Arthur paid quickly and returned to the car, but before starting it, he looked at his phone and his face paled. "What is wrong?" He showed me the screen. It was a text message from an unknown number. It contained only a photograph, the cabin in the mountains, our cabin, and below, a short message. "We are waiting for you." My blood froze. They already knew where we were going. How was it possible? "They must have tracked my phone," said Arthur, turning it off immediately and removing the battery. "Or yours. Give me your cell." I handed him my phone, and he did the same, ripping out the battery and throwing both phones into a nearby trash can. "Without phones, we cannot ask for help if something goes wrong," I said. "But they cannot track us either. It is a necessary trade." He started the car again, but now his expression was much more somber. "If they are already at the cabin, what do? We cannot just show up there." Arthur drove in silence for a minute, thinking. Then he took a detour onto a dirt road that went into the forest. "I know another way to get there. A trail hunters used years ago. It will drop us at the back of the property. We can approach without being seen. And if it does not work, then we improvise. But we are not going to give up, Emily. Not after coming this far." The dirt road was uneven and full of potholes. Arthur's car protested with every obstacle, but he kept going, deeper and deeper into the forest. Sunlight barely filtered through the treetops, creating long and ominous shadows. "When was the last time you came this way?" I asked, holding onto the seat as the car jumped over a rock. "Years ago. I used to come hunting with my father. I hope the trail is still passable." It did not look very passable, but Arthur refused to stop. Finally, after 20 tortuous minutes, we reached a small clearing. He parked the car behind some dense bushes, hiding it as best he could. From here, we go on foot. It is about a 20-minute walk to the cabin. We got out of the car, and the silence of the forest enveloped us. Only the wind in the leaves and the distant song of some birds could be heard. Arthur opened the trunk and took out a small backpack containing flashlights, water, and something that made my heart stop: a gun. "Do you really think that will be necessary?" I asked, pointing to the pistol he tucked into his belt. "I hope not, but Robert made me promise to protect you no matter what, and I am going to keep that promise." We began to walk along the trail barely visible between the trees. Every step took me further from the world I knew and closer to an uncertain future. I carried Robert's letter with me, carefully folded in my pocket. His words echoed in my mind. "You have a decision to make." But did I really have a choice? After everything that had happened, after knowing my husband had been murdered, that I had spent 5 years living in ignorance, could I simply turn my back? No, not anymore. Robert had started this, but I was going to finish it. "There it is," whispered Arthur, pointing through the trees. I could see the cabin in the distance, and just as the message had warned, there were 2 cars parked outside. We were not alone. We crouched behind a fallen log, observing the cabin from our hidden position. The 2 cars parked outside were black SUVs with tinted windows. I could not see how many people were inside the cabin, but I knew they were not there to welcome us. "The tree is on the other side," whispered Arthur, behind the cabin near the small creek. He studied the terrain, calculating distances and angles. If we move to the left, following the tree line, we can arrive without them seeing us from the windows. But we have to be silent. A single noise and they will know we are here. And if they already know, if they are waiting for exactly us to do this, it is a risk we have to take. We started moving slowly, crouched, using the trees and bushes as cover. Every branch that crunched under our feet made me hold my breath. My heart was beating so hard I was sure they could hear it from the cabin. It took almost 10 minutes to cover what would normally have been a 2-minute walk. But finally we reached the back of the property, and there it was. The old oak under which Robert and I had renewed our vows 25 years ago. It looked older now, more gnarled, but it was still majestic. Its roots stretched across the ground like ancient veins. Somewhere under those roots was the box we had buried, the box that now contained much more than our promises of love. "Do you remember exactly where you buried it?" asked Arthur in a barely audible voice. I closed my eyes, trying to remember. We'd been standing in front of the tree, Robert digging with a small shovel. I held the metal box. He had chosen a spot between 2 large roots on the side facing the creek. "There," I pointed, between those 2 roots. Arthur took a small folding shovel from his backpack and began to dig carefully, trying to make the least noise possible. The earth was more compact than we expected. Years of rain and root growth had sealed the spot like a tomb. Every movement of the shovel made me more nervous. How long before someone came out of the cabin, before they discovered us? After what seemed like an eternity, Arthur's shovel hit something metallic. We both froze, listening if anyone had heard the sound. Nothing, just the whisper of the wind and the murmur of the nearby creek. Arthur removed the dirt with his hands, slowly revealing a rusty metal box. It was bigger than I remembered. Robert had replaced our small box of promises with something much more substantial. He pulled it out of the hole carefully. It was sealed with a combination lock. Arthur looked at me. "Do you have any idea what the combination might be?" I thought quickly. Robert always used significant dates for his passwords and combinations. Our wedding date, the kids' birthdays. But this was different. This was something only I should be able to open. Then I knew. The date of our 25th anniversary, when we buried the original box. 2797. I turned the wheel with trembling fingers. August 27th, 97. The lock clicked and opened. Inside were documents. Lots of documents. Folders full of papers. USB drives. External hard drives. Robert had documented everything meticulously. Names, dates, amounts, bank transfers. It was a complete encyclopedia of corruption. My God, whispered Arthur, quickly scanning some papers. This is bigger than we thought. There are national-level politicians here, Supreme Court judges, businessmen who control entire industries. How much money? I asked. Hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe more. Decades of systematic theft of public funds. Suddenly we heard voices coming from the cabin. Arthur quickly closed the box and put it in his backpack. We have to go, now. We started backing toward the tree line, but then the back door of the cabin opened. 2 men came out, both armed, starting to sweep the perimeter. Do not move, whispered Arthur. If we move, they will see us. We froze behind a dense bush, barely breathing. One of the men walked straight toward us. 30 yards, 20, 10. Arthur put his hand on the gun in his belt. I closed my eyes, praying silently. The man stopped just 5 yards from our position. He took out a cigarette and lit it, looking toward the forest. For a terrible moment, I thought he had seen us, but then his radio crackled. Anything back there? It was the voice of Vanessa, the woman with my face. Nothing, just trees. Maybe they are not coming after all. They will come. They have no other choice. Keep your eyes open. The man took another drag of his cigarette, threw the butt down, and went back toward the cabin. Arthur and I waited another 30 seconds before daring to move. Let's go, he whispered, low and quiet. We began to retreat step by step, moving away from the cabin. But I knew this was not over. They would control all the exit roads. They would be waiting for us. Arthur, I whispered when we were far enough away. We cannot just leave. They are going to follow us. They are going to chase us until they get those documents. I know. That is why we are not going to run. He looked at me with a determination that scared me. We are going to end this here and now. Robert had contacts, people he trusted. Before throwing the phones, I sent a message to one of them, a federal prosecutor Robert knew, someone outside the corrupt system. I gave him these coordinates. He should be arriving with backup in less than 30 minutes. 30 minutes? Arthur, we cannot hold out 30 minutes against armed people. We do not have to hold out. We just have to not be found. We went back to the car, but instead of leaving, Arthur took more things out of the trunk. Flares, a rope, a hunting knife. What are you doing? Preparing. If they find us before the feds arrive, I need to make sure these documents do not fall into the wrong hands. He opened the box again and took out one of the USB drives. He gave it to me. Keep this. If something happens to me, if they separate us, you take this to the authorities. Do you understand? No matter what happens, this drive has to arrive safely. I took the small USB drive, feeling it heavy in my hand despite its tiny size. In this small object was the life and death of Robert, his legacy, his truth. Arthur, I am scared. He put his hands on my shoulders, looking me directly in the eyes. Emily, your husband made me promise to take care of you, but now I understand you do not need taking care of. You are stronger than you think. Robert knew. That is why he left this to you, because he knew you would have the courage to do the right thing when the time came. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but I dried them with determination. He was right. I was no longer the scared widow hiding in her house. I was no longer the woman living in ignorance. Now I knew the truth, and the truth demanded action. What do you need me to do? I need you to stay here, hidden. If you hear shots, if something goes wrong, you take that car and drive to the nearest town. Look for the federal police, not local. You hand them the drive and tell them everything. Promise me. I nodded, although every fiber of my being wanted to protest, wanted to tell him not to leave me alone. And what are you going to do? Arthur smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who has accepted his fate. I am going to make sure Robert did not die in vain. I am going to keep the last promise I made to my friend. Before I could answer, we heard engines. The black SUVs were moving away from the cabin, starting to comb the area. They had discovered us, or at least they knew we were close. Arthur pushed me gently toward the car. Hide. And whatever happens, do not come out until it is safe. Arthur? No. But he was already gone, moving through the trees with the backpack containing the box of documents, taking them away from me, becoming the decoy. I stayed alone in the car with the USB drive clenched in my hand, listening to the engines getting closer. The minutes that followed were the longest of my life. Hidden in the car, crouched in the back seat, I listened to the engines of the SUVs moving through the forest, voices shouting orders, footsteps running through the trees. And then The sound I feared most, gunshots, 3 quick shots followed by silence. Then more voices, more movement. I squeezed the USB drive against my chest, praying for Arthur to be okay, but knowing in my heart that he had done exactly what he promised, sacrificed himself to protect me. Silent tears ran down my face. Robert had died for this truth, and now Arthur too. How many more lives would it cost? When would this circle of violence and secrets end? Then I heard something different. Sirens. Lots of sirens, and the unmistakable sound of helicopters approaching. Arthur's backup had arrived. What followed was chaotic. More shots, shouts, orders amplified by megaphones demanding everyone drop their weapons. I remained hidden, shaking, not daring to move a muscle until everything went silent. Finally, someone knocked on the car window. It was a man in a bulletproof vest that said FBI in big letters. Behind him, dozens of federal agents were moving through the area, arresting the people who had been hunting us. Mrs. Henderson, I am Special Agent Davis. Arthur Morgan contacted us. He is safe. He is wounded, but he is going to be okay. The wave of relief that hit me almost made me faint. I got out of the car with trembling legs and the agent held me by the arm. You have the documents. I showed him the USB drive. He took it carefully, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. And maybe it was. This is going to change a lot of things, ma'am. A lot of very powerful people are going to fall for what your husband documented. They took me to where Arthur was being treated by paramedics. He had a gunshot wound in his shoulder, but he was conscious and smiling when he saw me. We made it, he said with a weak voice. Robert would be proud. I knelt beside him, taking his hand. You are a fool. You could have died, but I did not die, and now the truth is going to come out. I saw Vanessa being handcuffed and put into one of the federal vehicles. When she passed by me, our eyes met. There was no longer any similarity between us. She was just another criminal being brought to justice. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Robert's documents unleashed the biggest corruption scandal in decades. 14 high-level politicians were arrested, including 2 senators and a governor. Judges, businessmen, public officials, they all fell like dominoes. The money laundering scheme had moved more than $300 million over 20 years. Robert's name was vindicated. The media called him a hero, a brave accountant who dared to face the corrupt system. His death was officially reclassified as homicide, and new investigations were opened. Arthur recovered from his wound and was recognized for his bravery. Detective Miller, who had given us those 2 crucial hours, was promoted and put in charge of a new special anti-corruption task force. But for me, none of that mattered as much as the truth. I finally knew who my husband had really been. Not the quiet man who read the newspaper every morning, but the silent hero who risked everything to do the right thing. 3 months later, I returned to the cabin, this time alone, on a sunny and peaceful day. I walked to the old oak and sat under its shade, touching the earth where we had buried our promises so many years ago. I took out a new letter I had written, folded carefully. In it, I told Robert everything that had happened, how I had found his courage, how I had completed his mission. I told him I forgave him for the secrets, that I understood why he had done it, and I promised him I would live the rest of my life honoring his memory, not hiding from the world, but facing it with the same bravery he had shown. I dug a small hole and buried the letter under the tree, along with the ashes of the fear I had carried for so many years. When I got up to leave, I felt different. I was no longer the fragile and scared widow who had been woken up by desperate knocks on her door. I was a woman who had faced danger, who had discovered terrible truths, who had risked her life for justice. I was a woman who now knew that the truth, no matter how painful, is always worth discovering, because the truth is the only thing that makes us truly free. I drove back home as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in orange and pink colors. Jessica and David were coming to visit me that weekend. We had a lot to talk about, many things to heal, but now we could do it from honesty, without secrets separating us. My house no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a home, a place where I had loved, where I had lost, where I had discovered my own strength. And every night before sleeping, I looked at Robert's photograph on my nightstand and whispered the same words. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for believing I would be strong enough. And thank you for loving me enough to protect me, even after your death. Because in the end, that was what it had all been. A last act of love from a man who knew his wife had within her the courage to change the world, if only she was given the chance to discover it. And I had discovered it. The truth had come to light. Justice had prevailed, and I had learned that it is never too late to become the heroine of your own story. That morning, when Arthur knocked on my door at 6 a.m. with his desperate warning, I was just a scared woman. But by the end of the day, I had become something much bigger. I had become someone who refused to live in ignorance, who chose truth over comfort, who risked everything to do the right thing. And that, I discovered, was the most important lesson Robert had wanted to teach me. Not that I should be protected from the world, but that I had the strength to face it. Now, every morning when I wake up, I look out my bedroom window and see a new day full of possibilities. I am no longer afraid of shadows or secrets, because I have learned that light always finds a way to shine, no matter how much they try to hide it. And that light now lives in me, guiding me forward, reminding me that I am stronger than I ever imagined, that I am the guardian of Robert's legacy, that I am a survivor, that I am a fighter, that I am Emily Henderson. And my story does not end here. It is just beginning.